What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we're going to check out Netherfish Convergence. Actually, a lot of people have asked me for this, wanted to know whether or not this Star Soul is better than the current lane 16 ones, if it's worth going for it. And I hate that I had to read it for that, because this thing is seriously crazy long. I don't know. I had to definitely read it a few times to grasp what it was about. Now I have a pretty good idea about it. I have some theories. I did some testing, even though not too much, and it's a little bit difficult, as it's always with like stuff that is not really damage related. All the debuff stuff is essentially like, yeah, kind of hard to grasp, because we feel like there is not much happening in most situations, unless it is like really an exorbitant attack buff or something. You really don't feel like there's too much happening, and that can make it kind of difficult to analyze. Nonetheless, I wanted to take you with me. I wanted to show you guys what this Star Soul is about, what it's doing right now, and at least you hopefully you'll go away from this video saying, I understand now what Netherfish Convergence is about. I also don't want to torture your brain, so we're going to make this very easy. I'm just going to quickly go over what it does. So basically the Star Soul skill, which is of course the most important part, consists of two abilities. It consists of abilities for the buff Confluence, and then on abilities for the buff Diffusion. And every time Diffusion is on an enemy, on your hero, an enemy gets inverse Diffusion. And when Confluence is on your hero, an enemy gets inverse Confluence. So essentially, it depends on whether or not your HP is at 50% or above, or less than 50%. And of course, this already raises the question, will it be a similar bug as with Wukong, where when you have Wukong has a very, very similar skill with like 50% or more HP, or less than 50%, and both effects triggered at the same time, because he went to 50% at the start of the battle. So this is one of the kind of bugs of Wukong. I thought if you put this on Wukong, both effects could trigger, but I haven't tested this yet. I have to do this after Ace, but it's interesting. And essentially, if you have more than 50% HP, you will get Confluence for one round on your hero at the beginning of the round, and inverse Confluence will be inflicted on one enemy with the lowest HP. And Confluence then has the following effect, which we find in this paragraph. Every time the hero acts, and has Confluence, one of the following effects will be triggered at random. And there are three different effects that we have. The first one increases the energy by 100 for targets with inverse Confluence, so the hero with the lowest HP, and it inflicts outbursts of magic on them, and that essentially means it gives them 100 energy, and then reduces their energy down to 0 and deals damage based on the energy they had. And this is written down here. For every 1 point of energy the target has, will receive 15% of attack damage, and its energy bar will be zeroed. This probably won't deal like a very insane amount of damage. So the cool part here really is that you get like an energy wipe ability on your hero. So you have a chance to just reduce the energy of a hero to 0. I'm not a big fan of this ability, for the reason that this Confluence is inflicted on the hero with the lowest HP. And usually that isn't really the biggest threat. I would have much rather seen this in the other tree, the Diffusion tree. We will see in a second why, and not really here. So this, in my opinion, a little bit of a weaker ability nonetheless. Always good to wipe some energy from the enemy side. So yeah, I guess it's still decent. Then we have the reduced target's effect of being healed by 50%. And besides, additionally deals 1,300 attack damage to the target when they are healed. So every time they receive a heal, they receive damage, which is pretty cool. And then this effect lasts for 2 rounds and cannot be stacked, so it's cool. Question is, of course, if this can be reapplied during the time. During its validity period, when self takes damage from basic attacks or active skills, there's an 80% chance to restore 1% of attack HP to targets with inverse Confluence. Of course, this is not meant to really heal the enemy, but basically, your hero takes damage, heals the enemy for a very, very small amount, and that, of course, activates the damage again, and we have the reduced effect of being healed. And this is a great ability, because it's on the enemy with the lowest HP, which sometimes will be like a damaged enemy. And then you get a better chance of really killing this enemy off, because it can't really be healed and will receive consistently a lot of damage. So that is a pretty good ability. I really like it. And then we have this one. Transfers one random attribute buff from targets with inverse Confluence to self and inflicts 1 layer of Curse of Decay, which is the 4Cs mark. And this essentially once the enemy receives an attribute buff, will trigger, will deal a ton of damage, and will remove that attribute buff. So that is a pretty good ability as well. The thing is, we also have an effect from the Confluence itself. We increase our all damage dealt to targets with inverse Confluence, in this case to the lowest HP enemy, by 15%. Not very strong. In PvE terms, this won't be a big game changer. 15% all damage dealt seems like a strong effect. It's nice, but a lot of times now in PvE you already have many sources of all damage dealt. For example, a melodic strings or your antler skin will be a big source, or you have some outside sources with different charms or different other sets, and it of course effects from like your destiny transition and everything. This will also play into it, and oftentimes there is a lot of all damage dealt on the field, and we have a lot of it also in especially the 2023 festival treasures. So not really too great of an effect, but should be known. Confluence, 15% more damage to the target with inverse Confluence, and throughout the fight, I guess every single round, this could be another target. In a PvP situation, I would imagine this target switches around a little bit. When we get more in the sustain meta, it could be worthwhile to get like a little bit of extra damage. So what do I think about the Confluence effects? I think the first one, energy wipe, not too great. Second one, absolutely great. Also introduces, and that I want to add, if you run something like a DGN, this introduces an absolute insane 50% effect of being healed. Debuff to the enemy that you could replicate as well. So very, very nice. We take it. Pretty cool. And then we got the Curse of Decay. Inflicting Curse of Decay is never bad. So pretty solid first part. And then we have Diffusion. For Diffusion, your HP has to be less than 50%. And then we grant ourselves Infusion, and one enemy with the highest attack, so different one, highest attack, that's your main threat on the board, we inflict inverse Diffusion on them. And then this actually also has an effect, and it works as such, reduces all damage taken from targets with inverse Diffusion by 15%, so the biggest threat on the board will deal less damage to you, which is really nice. And I thought kind of like maybe for a hero like SSM, when you have this, and the main enemy damage dealer can't really deal proper damage to you anymore. That would be really nice. And we will see that this effect, this reduced damage taken effect from inverse Diffusion that is later on buffed, we can kind of see it right here. The reduction effect on all damage taken from targets with inverse Diffusion is increased to 40%. So this is absolutely huge, because that will make it that instead of just like taking 15% less damage, 40%. So that has a massive effect and could be very interesting with some heroes that you really want to keep alive. The very easy counter to this, or for many people a very easy counter to this, would just to run a hero with higher attack than your main damage dealer, and not run your main damage dealer as highest attack. It's honestly in endgame overvalued. I don't need a damage dealer with 1 billion attack to win in PvP. That really won't grant me more victories. 200 million attack more or less on my main damage dealer won't decide whether I win or not. So that is not something that we kind of have to think about. But what we have to keep in mind, this will be on the enemy with the highest attack. And that, of course, is very, very important when we talk about the effects right now. This, again, is the same mechanic every single time our hero acts. One of the following effects will be triggered at random. We steal 50 energy from targets with inverse infusion and increase self-control immunity by 25% and damage reduction by 25% for 2 rounds. So very nice actually to stay alive. And we then of course also have very nice control immunity. So again, kind of making me think of Star Swordsman Mockman, that this would be a very nice combination to just increase the damage reduction, get some control immunity, get some energy, steals 50 energy, so we get the energy. Which is pretty cool, and we take the energy from like the main damage dealer potentially. Very, very good. Increases self effect of being healed. Not too sure, not too great. When self is healed, additionally deals 1000% attack damage to targets with inverse diffusion. Okay, and this effect lasts for 2 rounds and cannot be stacked during its validity period if targets with inverse diffusion take damage from basic attacks or active skills. Self has 80% chance to restore 1500% of attack HP. This last part I think is really cool, because this just means essentially every single time we hit the opponent's main damage dealer, our hero gets healed. And for a hero such as SSM, this is especially nice, because when he takes a little bit of damage during the fight and gets maybe to half-life or something, this will lift him back up and make it easier for him to survive. So this is still a very great ability and doesn't really follow isn't quite the same as the upper one. They look so similar, but this is just to make it easier to kill the weakest opponent. This is to keep basically the unit that has this inverse diffusion alive and allow them to recover HP. And then we have this, the last effect, removes one random attribute reduction effect from self, with an 80% chance to remove one random attribute buff from targets with inverse diffusion. So again, we have buff removal, which some people will not like for PvE, because sometimes you want to copy buffs with scissors. Of course, if you remove the buffs, then they are gone, so not too great. It's also the reason people didn't like the deific scissors really much, but yeah, this is a very similar effect to that. But removing attribute reduction effect from self is basically free attribute purify, so it's pretty good. What do I think about this? So now we've read through this entire effect, and it took like 10 minutes, which is typical for idle heroes nowadays, but giving you a slow breakdown of this. From what I've seen, only a select few heroes can really trigger the diffusion part. And sadly, the heroes that I really would want this on, like Stasos and Mockman, is not really it, because we have no way to have him consistently below 50% HP at the beginning of a round. Really, that would be Wukong, and not even Wukong if they coded it correctly. It would really be Madeline, where we currently have it on, by the way. And they will consistently be there with the diffusion, so it is a little bit tough. And if you have a lot of heal effects, then your hero might always be like in the first state, which kind of limits it a little bit. I think it's kind of sad. For this one, I would have wished there was like a button in AFK Journey. We have heroes that have like a selectable ability, where you can just decide at the beginning of the fight whether or not you want the ability work in one way or another, and I wish it was kind of the same here, or something like front row, back row, or something, where you can decide on which effects to have, because this would be great if this was consistently on like SSM, where this is more like, yeah, not really on SSM, this is more like something I would probably run on an LDA or something like this. Doesn't really matter. This is just very interesting, by the way. It will be very interesting to see how this works with something like an LDA. But it's a pretty cool effect. There are a lot of like really good effects in here. I don't think there are too many effects where you would say, oh, this really sucks that is activated now. A lot of this is really good. The middle effects always with a longer duration. You can combine a lot of this. So I think it's pretty good. I think it's not super strong for PvE, essentially. I think in a lot of states you will be doing this. None of those will be really too great for it. It's very versatile Star Soul that you can just throw on in PvP, I think. What else do we have? So, then we have the Star Soul Burst, of course, activated after the Star Soul hits 3 times. And then again, we see our Confluence and Inverse Confluence. If self has 50% or more HP, we get Confluence, and we inflict Inverse Confluence on 3 enemies with the lowest HP for 1 round. And this one was a little bit weird, because this activates when you do your Star Soul for the 3rd time. Usually the Inverse Confluence is granted to you at the beginning of the round. So this is at the beginning of the round, but we will see in a test that the Star Soul Burst activates when the hero acts. So this kind of creates like a different scenario, because we of course have those effects that we have to keep in mind. And especially this last one for Diffusion. If you put Diffusion on the enemies, then you potentially can put it with this on 3 enemies with the ice attack. So half the enemy team will have Diffusion and will deal 40% less damage to your to the hero applying it, which will have will have Inverse Diffusion and will deal 40% less damage to the hero with Diffusion. So this can be really good, but then you also want to be fast, obviously, because you have to do it. Basically, you have to attack before the enemy attacks for this to have value. Otherwise, it just won't matter, because it's just for 1 round. It will basically go from the time your hero attacks till the end of the round. And then it will just be gone. And then the ability here will start again and will decide whether it's Confluence or Diffusion again. So you kind of have to be fast to make this work. And for the Inverse Confluence, I'm not even sure. Is this value? Increase all damage dealt to targets with Inverse Confluence. I mean, the idea is probably you act, and then the Inverse Confluence gets applied. But it should, honestly, it's a weird situation now that I think about it. Because this will still trigger. the beginning of the round aspect will still trigger. So there will already be a hero with either Confluence or Diffusion, and potentially you could have both active at the same time. Because then this will decide. And this will only decide when your hero acts. So a hero such as Madeline will reduce her HP to below 50%, then potentially apply Diffusion, and at the time when she acts and activates her Star Soul Burst, she might be above 50% HP and apply Confluence. And then you have both effects on the board. Which is really, really weird. And then at the same time you would have Diffusion and Confluence. And you could kind of trigger 2 effects then. Wow, this is like really weird. But okay, pretty cool stuff. Let's quickly go through the below abilities and then we will kind of check it out in the fight. There's not much to see really. If the first effect of Confluence is triggered, additionally reduces target's damage reduction by 25 and speed by 75. So what is the first effect? Increase energy by 100 for targets with inverse Confluence, inflicts outburst of magic on them, so wipe the energy. And this will then also reduce damage reduction and speed. So pretty good. 75 speed is a very nice debuff to multiply actually with something like DGN, so we take it. Third effect of Diffusion is triggered, additionally reduces target's attack by 25%. Third effect of Diffusion is removes 1 random attribute reduction from self with an 80% chance to remove 1 random attribute buff from targets with inverse Diffusion. And this will now also reduce target's attack. Decent, not really convincing me too much. We talked about this one with the all damage reduction effect. Very, very good. That's one of the best ones here. And then we have the last one, bonus effect on all damage dealt 2 targets with inverse Confluence is increased to 40%. So this would make it to 40% all damage dealt, which is also very, very strong. Actually, it's a big all damage dealt chunk, so this almost makes it worth it again. I guess for like the Star Expedition people, it will be a battle between like having this all damage dealt, which is nice if you can apply it, and kind of fearing that this will remove too many attribute buffs from the enemy to really make it worthwhile. So I think that's going to be the battle. We're just going to go and check it out in Flame Shrine. I think this is the best way. We have like this team. It's on my Madeline. We can try to see it. I don't even think we're going to see too much. Neither do I expect like a big thing. So we have the Star Soul active over here, is the little fish. And then we have the other fish. So it's pretty interesting. I'm not too sure about the effects. It should be Diffusion. But this one is also the lowest HP one, I think. Yeah, it should be the lowest HP one as well. Huh. And now she has full HP. Isn't it at the same position as the butterfly? So this one could be behind the butterfly. Okay, can you stop triggering my SQH? I want to keep an eye out for those effects. And I guess it will be difficult to identify which effect really triggered. Especially in the situation where you don't really know. So she still has like has like below 50% HP. So this should be Diffusion. I'm pretty sure it's Diffusion. Let's make it a little bit quicker. Or a lot quicker. Okay, you can see both. See, you can see both. It's a bit messy, but it's alright. We can see both. Okay, let's see what's now. So it's still on there. It's pretty much consistently stays on there. Not too bad. But you don't really know which effect triggered. I bet none of you guys could tell me which effect triggered here. So is it good? No, that was the Star Soul Burst there, triggered after it activated. And I haven't seen at all which one. Yeah. Okay. Should be turn 6, right? Let's check on turn 6. If it actually applies the fish to the heroes. Oh, very nice speed on the Star Alchemist Tom's Young. Very good. Could have been a few more actor skills before that. So, acts, applies. We can't see any fish. So I don't know. It should show the fish, right? It should show the fish on the other heroes. Because it applies them to more, but it doesn't show any fish. So I'm a bit worried that this actually doesn't work, the Star Soul Burst. Because it should have been there. We should have seen fish on them, in my opinion. At least that would be the visual effect. On top, it's anyway hard to identify what you can really do there. PvE-wise, maybe another interesting aspect. It just triggered again? It triggered again? Why did it trigger again and showed the same effect once again? Two turns in a row. 2 turns in a row should be impossible. It should trigger on 6. It should trigger on like 3. And then we have it on 6. Yeah, every third round. But not on 7. Just triggered again. That is so weird. Does it trigger again this round? But we didn't get fish again. I don't really understand why it triggered. Maybe I missed something. Maybe somebody can write it in the comments. Okay, we activate again. And again the fish trigger. That was 3 turns in a row. Okay, let's speed it up. I don't really know what's going on there. I haven't really read that. It's just like the design of the effect triggering, but that shouldn't be the case. Fairly weird. Fairly weird. But as I said, it's tough to say anything. If we think about PvE, by the way, one thing that I want to add is like the Void campaign. If we have Void campaign, enemies are faster than we are. So that makes it kind of tough to get good use of like something like Diffusion. In theory, it's pretty cool, but only against a select few heroes that later on deal damage to you. Maybe something like a Valkyrie would deal less damage. Maybe like a Gustin could deal less damage. And then potentially you can build up a hero with that is at least very tanky against them. So it's a little bit of potential, but I don't think it's like too insane. Honestly, I would run this in PvP. If I had like DGN on the board, maybe IEA, always say it in the wrong order. I would probably run this. I could really see myself doing well with that. And then, yeah, I'm not sure about bosses yet. I don't think I necessarily have the room for it. Or do I? In a Flame Shrine team, probably I could still run it. Yeah, in Flame Shrine would be fine. Getting like the all damage dealt. But it would still be only all damage dealt by the... Wouldn't it still be all damage dealt? I have to check that once again. Let's check it. Let's see the damage numbers. Turn 15. It would be so nice if we could still see the hits. Yeah. Okay, very good damage, I would say. Capped right here at the E19. The game, by the way, can't display more than that. That's the highest number the game can display here. And then it will show you the real damage over here, which of course is a lot higher. Yeah, so what I meant was you need to have Confluence to deal more damage to the targets with inverse Confluence. So like in this situation, it would be my Madeline dealing more damage to the enemy. So that really limits the profit your allies can have from this. Diffusion has a nice synergy with Taunt. So I guess that's pretty cool. If you use Taunt, then you have all enemies attack you, and then you have some enemies that deal less damage to you. I think that's a very nice synergy, but it's too tough to activate. So I think there it fails a little bit. I don't think this will be used for bossing. Can't really see it. Unless you're really in a struggling situation and need to remove more attribute buffs than you already can with Butterfly. I have to say mid. For PvP, cool. For PvP, I see synergies. But for like everything PvE-wise, I would say it's rather mid. Probably a star sword that I would go for later. Like, I think there is a certain set of star swords that is a must-have in my opinion. And then there are optional ones. You don't need Butterfly, but can be nice in some situations. You don't need Bloom Genesis, but can be nice in some situations. Bloom is like a very good PvP choice. Bit better than the other ones, but it's also kind of optional. You 100% need Spectre, you 100% need Pupil in my opinion, and I would say if you do any PvP, 100% Nova, and you at least want to have so much Nova that you can put like the damage over time effect on the enemies so that you can use it for bossing, so you at least want to have it unlocked so that you can activate Phoenix with it. So I think those three are like must-haves, and then you go into the optional ones, and if you don't have those three already, I wouldn't even think about going for Netherfish, and even then I would probably go Time Bloom first, and then it's really a decision between those three, which in my opinion are rather optional. Bloom always had the disadvantage that it reduced too much speed, this removes too many attribute buffs, and like it helps with survivability, but too much, really. Reduce your damage while doing it. And then we have Netherfish, which is still good. It's like very versatile, very hard to control. Has some disadvantages in my opinion. And probably, I guess the biggest thing for it would be if you could use it on Wukong and both effects trigger. If you get that, then I'm cool with it. Then I think is really nice. If the same goes for Madeline, then it's really good. I think that we have to show that in testing. And I will do so, and I will do the testing, and I will show that then in a guide for a team with the Star Soul. Because I want to bring you guys a team. I want to bring you guys a use where the Star Soul really shines, and we will make a team with it. I think that's the best way to do it. But right now, this is not my Star Soul. This is my Star Soul. It's bloody level 5. Can't do anything. And we really need to unlock at least like this stuff and this stuff. Which of course goes to 40% at the max level. And I think this is important. Another aspect, by the way. I haven't really said that yet. Max Destiny Trail, kinda bad. Especially compared to the enhanced Star Souls. 22 mil attack won't really make people happy. So, yeah. Very optional one. Very, very optional one. From those 3, Bloom, Butterfly, Netherfish, I would go Netherfish. That I could agree. I think Netherfish of those 3 is the coolest, if that helps you. Okay, if you like this video, then definitely hit the like button, hit the hype button, subscribe to the channel, and check out SG Hub down in the description, because SG Hub provides you with the best and cheapest Starry Gems. 0% scams there. Is really the safest way for you to get Starry Gems and get at a great price. So definitely recommend you support me, of course, by using it. And with that, I wish you guys a great day. We'll see us in the next one.